We're going to pick up from where we left off last time. If you remember last time, we did a couple of API calls into Pinata. The more interesting one was the pinning API call that allowed us to upload an image to Pinata and get back a content identifier for it. We also have that information stored in IPFS_media, which was the CID and a name and a description that we supplied. And then we stored off the whole JSON from the request, just so we had that information for debugging later if we wanted to. But this time our focus is going to be on Tatum.io, and we're going to create a wallet on the Polygon blockchain. We're going to create public key in that wallet, and we're going to create a private key in that wallet. And that information is going to allow us to do what is in subsequent videos, which is to deploy an NFT contract to the Polygon blockchain, and then to mint an NFT against that contract using the image we uploaded to pinata.cloud in the first video. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this rolling. This should be a pretty straightforward 3 API calls. We'll just kind of roll forward with this at this point. We're going to start with the wallet. We're going to copy the curl command, and we're going to use that in our new function for Tatum wallet create. Let's see, I don't think we need any inputs for this one, but we obviously need the external API request. We will import curl. So pretty simple call there. And then we need to replace with our API key. Go ahead and highlight this. We did this in the first video as well. Put in a %s and then use the sprintf filter, having it replace the %s with the environment variable for the Tatum API key that I've already entered. Now you can get your Tatum API key from your Tatum.io dashboard when you've signed up for a free account. There is a mainnet and a testnet API key. We're using the testnet because we can then do all this testing without having to buy real Matic tokens and spend real money. So testnet is the API key you want to use. Okay, so we've got this set up. Oh, let's see, I forgot to change my output. Call that wallet created. And then we'll come down here and grab wallet created. And then I'm also going to just clean up the API response a little bit. I really don't need to see all the header request information and all that. So we're going to go with response result, which if you remember from prior calls we did in the other video, that's pretty much what you always see. And that'll just pull out the interesting bits from the API response. So at this point, if I run this, just to take small little baby steps, we should see an XPub and a mnemonic. Okay, so we just called into our Tatum.io account using our API key, and we have the information that we're going to need for the next 2 API calls. The XPub will get me a public address, or many of them if I want, and the mnemonic will get me private keys, which allows me to buy stuff through a blockchain with my money if I was not on the testnet, but it'll be free because we are. Now, I'm going to also do a few things that probably aren't best practice, but since this is a learning video and I'm using testnet, I am going to store all this information in a database table in Xano so that I can reference it later to make sure that the work we're doing is working and just to make it a little easier for me to interact. So not something I would recommend when you're doing real production code for your marketplace, but a great starting point for what we're doing now. So now that I know this works, I'm going to go create a table where I can store this information and more. So let's see here. We'll keep it simple. We will create wallet. I'm going to get rid of the CRUD endpoints. I do not need any API endpoints for this table. And then I'm going to build out all the columns that I need. So the first thing I want to know is which blockchain is it against? And then I want to know, let's say we'll store the XPub. Then we'll also store the index because I can have more than one public and private piece of data, and I have to tell it what index that is. And then in the case of the XPub, it'll be a private address, so we'll want to store that. And then we will want the mnemonic. I always spell that wrong, but it looks like I got it this time. And then I'll want a private address. Then I'm a fan of having the created at way at the end, just so it's out of the way. So at this point, I'll be storing blockchain testnet in the blockchain, or Polygon testnet, and then we'll get back an XPub and a mnemonic. So that'll be what's filled in after this first call. The index, public address, private address will be filled in the subsequent two calls. So we're only going to fill in a subset of the data this time. So the wallet create, we're going to do an update to that. We know it's working, but what we want to do next is make use of that database table. I'm going to add a record to the wallet. And I'm going to go ahead and hardcode Polygon testnet because the URL we're using is very specific. It is for the Polygon blockchain, which means I'll never be doing, Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything like that here. I would have to have separate URLs. So I just as well hardcode this. It's not changing. And then the XPub, we're going to get that one out of wallet created. Get, and then we're going to have the response result XPub. And I'm going to go ahead and grab everything but XPub out of this into the clipboard. And the reason for that is I'm going to use it for my mnemonic. So I'm not doing index yet. I'm not doing public address yet. I'm doing mnemonic from wallet created. I'm going to do the get and the path. I'll paste that in and then type in mnemonic because that is what was used in the API result. And then I don't have private address yet, but I will let it fill in created at. So at this point, I changed this to be wallet stored. There we go. So I've got my API call that's doing wallet created. I've got an add record that's storing that information. And then I'm just showing, like I did before, the result information out of the API call. So if all works well, I'll see the same information, except I will also see in the wallet, I've stored Polygon testnet, I've got the XPub, and I've got the mnemonics. So, and index is 0, which I really don't want that there. Did I not get rid of index or did I not see what my settings are? Not required. Default value is optional. I'm going to go just double check and see what I did in the API because I really don't want to store that as 0, even though I'm going to fix it later. Because that's interesting. Okay, we're not going to get hung up on that for the moment because in the later API call, we are going to update that index to be what we want it to be. And we'll actually start it at 0, but I'm a fan of only creating the data when I know that it's accurate. So at this point, what I've done is created a wallet. So that is the starting point. It's an empty wallet. And the next thing we're going to do is do an API call to get a public address. Okay, so I clicked on that. We're going to do the extended public key, which is the XPub, and we are going to do this API call. Now this one's going to be a little bit trickier since they've got some special characters in here representing where we're going to replace values. That'll mess with the curl import in Xano. So we're going to do a little bit of cleanup on that just to make sure that we've got a good import. But I'm going to copy and we are going to create a new function. This one is Tatum public address create. This one will have some input. There's two things I'm going to need for this one. One is going to be, let's do it the fun way. One is going to be the table reference to the wallet, because I want to pick which wallet I'm going to use, even though I only have one at this point. And then the other is going to be an integer for the index. If you remember, the wallet itself can hold, I may not have mentioned this yet, but hold, I think, upwards of 2 billion plus different indexed public addresses and private keys. And so we need to tell it which index it is. And so that will be passed in. We may not use those immediately, but we will get those added in by the time we're done. Let's go ahead and add in our API request. Did I keep that? I did. Good. Okay. So I'm going to clean these up a little bit so they don't mess things up. But before I do that, let me show you how they mess things up if there's some special characters in there. If I do the import and then I come in and look at this, you'll notice that it URL encoded these. That right there is the replacement for the open curly bracket. So if I were to do this, it would start looking a little normal. But whenever you start deleting things, you don't know if you're deleting the right stuff. So what I'm going to decide to do is come back in here and re-import the curl. And while it's still in this state, I know that I'm going to want to pass in the extended public address, the xpub that we already have. I need to use that. And then this index will also be replaced with the index that we have in the input. So I'm going to use my sprintf function like I did in the Pinata Cloud video I did before this one, and use the sprintf to replace two variables at this time. So let's import that, and you'll see that it's cleaner, and it's just waiting for us to do some replacement on them. And then let's go clean up the easy thing here. Once again, very popular sprintf for replacing values in strings. This one is going to be the environment variable for the Tatum API key, so we're good there. And let's see. So to be able to replace some of the values, I am going to do a get on the wallet ID because I need the xpub. So I'm going to add that get the database request get record from the wallet. And you'll notice it puts it at the bottom. Something I always forget to send in to the Xano folks, and they're always really good at responding to enhancement stuff, is would love for this plus sign to add to the top of the stack, because I've got plus signs it'll add after or at the end. But sometimes I add one in and forget to move it up, but this time I did not. Okay, so let's go ahead and wallet item, because I'm getting a specific item. See, I forgot to change this output. I'm going to clean that up, otherwise I'm going to forget altogether. And this will be public address created. That's not, see, that's not really public address. Yeah, public address created. Okay, so let's, now that I've done my little cleanup, let's specify which one we're getting. We want to get it against the ID. I want to use the input value of wallet ID. So that will get me back a wallet item record. And what I want to do then is I'm going to use the values of wallet item in this get for the sprintf. If you remember in here, the first thing we're going to have is the xpub, and then we're going to have the index. So let's go ahead, since I put %s, that means I'm going to use the sprintf. And the first thing I'm going to get for a parameter is the variable wallet item. And then I am going to pull out the xpub. And then, you know what I should do, and I'll explain why here. I'm not going to do it with the dot notation. I am going to do it with add filter and get. And the reason for that, let's see, xpub, we'll see, let's see, let me save this. Let's come back in. The reason I am getting the xpub this way is if you use get, but the variable is not actually there, it will at least do a null. Even though that won't work, what it'll avoid doing is having this function blow up, because if you do a dot notation and the variable, or the property I should say, isn't there, then it'll terminate the function abnormally, and it's a little harder to manage that error. So this is a nice clean way to make sure that there's not an error with a missing column. Okay, so that gets the first one. Plus we learned a little bit about why we use get as opposed to dot notation. And now the second one is going to be, oh, let me see, sprintf. I need to go back into sprintf. And we're going to add in the input of index. Okay. So I'm going to replace the xpub and the index. And that should get me, along with the API key, a successful call. So I'm going to pass in a wallet ID of 1, because that's what was in the table, and an index of 0. Oh, there's one more thing I want to do. I want to get public address created here. And then I'm going to go ahead and get the clean results instead of all the header info, which is response result, as we've done before. Save that, and let's see if we get ourselves a public address. Wallet ID of a 1, index of a 0. Go ahead and run that. Bingo, so we get the public address. I'm going to grab that public address, and I'm going to go out to the database and manually enter that one so I have it. And then we're going to come back to the address create, and we're going to add in an update to that wallet. I'm going to edit that record because I want to automatically store the public address. And it's going to be based on the field name of ID, and the field value will be from wallet ID, right? Because that's what I passed in, which means I used the xpub from that one. So why not do the update with that one? And then I don't have to update blockchain or xpub. I do need to update index. And you'll notice if you use the same name for table and input, Xano is really good about doing that for you. And then I know I need the public address, which is coming out of public address created variable. And then I want to do, like I said before, I want to do the get instead of the dot notation. If that API fails, which is much more likely than the database not having a column, then I want to use get so I don't have a harsh termination. So that's response.result.xpub. No mnemonic, private address, created at. Don't need to update any of those. Okay. And I always remember to do this after wallet. So this is wallet dated. Now I don't actually know what happens if I call the wallet or the public address API with the same index number. So we're going to experiment here and see what happens. Okay. So looks like we got the same address. Wonder if I have that stored off here. I do. So if I call that, yep, same address. I had it in the clipboard and took a quick look. So it's going to be hard to know if it actually updated the database correctly. So what we're going to do is come over to the wallet. I've got the index of 0, which was already there. We're going to delete stuff. And we're going to rerun that API. Oh, it keeps putting 0 because it is a number. Change type, no. Settings, Let's see if I can required, no. Yeah, it looks like it's gonna always store. Wonder if it'll let me do null. Nope, it will not. Make sure I don't have bad data in there. Okay, I'll stop messing around and focus on what we're here for. Okay, so we'll still have 0. Well, just to make sure it's updating, I'll put in 1, which is incorrect, but it should change to 0, and then the public address should fill in. So keep me focused. Let's keep going here. We'll use the same data, wallet ID and index. It'll work. We'll get the same address back. We'll come up to the database. Oh, see, it's not working. Okay. Good that we test some things, right? Because I was pretty sure it was probably working, and it's not, which means I am probably getting the wrong information in the edit record. Now the 0 worked, so it means I'm updating the right record, but the public address created, so I've got this right, and I'm getting response result dot xpub. Let me check down here. Is it response dot result? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to run it again and look at debug. I'm doing something goofy. Come over to the debugger. The get record will be there, external API request. So here's what I'm getting back with response result. Oh, silly me, I'm living in the old world. Xpub was the prior API. I want to use address. Okay, so that made life easy with how they have the debugger set up. Well, let's come in here and fix this. Address. Save it. Come back to wallet and mess up the data again. And that way we'll make sure everything is working. Okay, so there's address there. And if I come back to wallet, much better. Change to 0, stored the public address. So the next stop is the private address. Let's go ahead and create a Tatum. Should say private key. I always say that wrong. Private key create. So I need to pass in the mnemonic, and that's part of the wallet. So that is going to be a table reference like we did last time for wallet. Okay. And then we also want an external API request. We're going to go back over to the Tatum documentation for private key. And we are, oh, I'm going to need an index as well. I forgot about that. We're going to copy this. If I remember correctly, I don't know that I need this mnemonic. Yeah, I do need that. What am I talking about? I need the mnemonic. I need the index. We'll use my key, even though there's a way around it. We'll import. And so I'm going to go out and look and make sure this looks clean, and it does, so that's good. It's a post, not a get. We're going to set the index, and we're going to set the mnemonic, and then content type and the API key. So I already know what to do for my API key. We've done that a number of times now. %s, printf, and the environment variable for Tatum API key. So that's happy. I'm going to come back up here and add the index. Just like we had for the public address, I need it for the private key. I will fix this before it's too late, which is private key created. Okay, so we're going to do the same things we did for the public address, which is we're going to add in the query or the get database record, so we got the mnemonic. Then we're going to add a function after this API call to update the wallet table. So let's get rolling with that. We're going to take a chance, and instead of just going with the API call, we're going to see how much we can add in to get working. We're going to live on the edge a little bit here. So the ID, and we know that we're pulling that out of wallet ID, which is passed in. And I need to move this to the top. And this is going to be wallet item, I think is the structure I'm using. And then we're going to come into here, and we're going to fix the index so that it's not a hard-coded value. We are going to clear that and use the index we passed in. And then for the mnemonic, we're going to clear all of this and use wallet item. And I want to get, so add filter, get, that is mnemonic. And that'll be from the database that we get that. The API key is updated. We've got my index and my mnemonic. Okay, so that should be good to go. So in theory, I'm getting back a private key created. You know, I probably will have to run this before I add in the next one because I don't know what the API response is going to look like. So let's go ahead and do that. But maybe you were just yelling this at me. I need to update this to private key created. Let's go ahead and clean up to this response result. We just get the stuff we want back. Okay, so we should get a private key this time. If I'm smart enough to specify the wallet ID and I want the same indexed. Nice. And it is just called key. So if you remember this 293.7F4, we'll probably see that exact same address show up when we make our update here. So the database request, going to edit a record, going to be the wallet table. I am going to use the wallet ID that was passed in because that's what we used for the other piece of this. Don't need to update blockchain or XPub. Do not need to update the index. Actually, I do. Even though it's the same as last time, this will be a whole new record. No, it won't be a new record. I don't need to update this. Let's see, mnemonic, I don't need to, but private address is really the only thing I'm looking to update. And so I'm going to get that a private key created, which is a result of the API. Response result key. Okay. And in my trailing efforts, private key updated. Okay. So if I come back and look at my database, I guess I did update the index in my last one. We might make some changes to that. I don't need to update it, but I do need to probably filter on it or query on it. But let's focus on the private address right now, and then I'll get back to what I'm babbling about there. Private key. Run this. And I should at least see the private key. And there it is. Now when I called it private address, I'm going to have to change that. That's going to bug me. You can see, there it is. Well, let's see, we may end up killing some of our data here, but it's not a private address, it is a private key. I'm going to rename that. Warning, renaming it, it may not preserve the data. It's fine, we can just rerun it in this case. But you always want to consider that if you rename something. There. So it did kill that data. But knowing how all this works for us, I can just quickly rerun it. Come back to the database. Oh, silly me. Look at that. I change a name, I get in a hurry, And we all realize now what I did wrong, which is I am updating what used to be private address no longer exists. And so I hadn't told it to update the private key. So I do have to come in here and make some change. I'm getting a little too sloppy, I guess. Response, result, what was it, key? See how fast I can make stuff work or stay broken. There we go. Okay, so now we have everything filled in. So for the wallet, for this index, I have all my good data. Now what I was talking about before, I'm going to do a little cleanup. I'm probably running a little long here, and I apologize for that. But what I would like to do is, as opposed to get record from wallet, no, I'll be okay. Okay. Here is what my problem was, and it's not really a problem. I wanted to make sure that I was addressing the correct index. And so updating it where I did is going to be an acceptable approach. Not great, but I don't want to overdo the logic at this point. I wanted to make sure that the index represented what I had here. So I've got a bit of a disconnect because I could input a 0 for the public address and then input a 1 for the private key. And that would make this wrong for one or the other. I'm going to leave that for a later video because this one's been going for a little while. And my main goal in this one was to get us all set up with a wallet that has public address and private key. Because in the next video, what we're going to be addressing is probably the deploy NFT contract that we'll have to use this information for. And if time allows, in that same video, we might even mint the NFT. Might break that out into separate videos. But we're getting really close to actually getting to the fun part of this, which is minting an NFT. I appreciate you hanging out with me on this one, and I will talk to you on the next one.